What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for November 17th, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. We had our Collision review go up on Saturday this week due to the Full Gear pay-per-view happening last night, so the SmackDown review was bumped to Sunday, which isn't a rare thing. Sometimes I've done them on Sundays if I'm busy on Saturdays. But yeah, I thought this was a great show. Well worth the wait in reviewing it because I thought this was another really, really good show from SmackDown. As you probably know from hearing my audio review of the show from last week, I thought that was a stellar show and one of the best Blue Brain episodes all year. I wasn't really sure how they would follow that up. We have Survivor Series next weekend. Next week's go-home show will be on FS1, by the way, next Friday night, for those that intend on tuning in live. And they didn't really advertise a lot for this show. They advertised LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso, which we've seen at least twice before, and I'll get into that match soon enough. We had that and the return of Solo Sikoa, as if he's been gone for like months on end. But he was only... They were advertising his first promo, and we didn't hear from Solo on the show. It was his first appearance since beating John Cena at Crown Jewel. There was no word on what was going on with the women after the big angle last week, what was going on with Grayson Waller and Austin Theory and Santos and all this other sort of stuff. We ended up getting a really, really good show out of this. I don't know if this was put together at the last minute or if they just didn't want to bother advertising stuff in advance if it was being put together closer to showtime. I'm not sure. But this turned into a very, very good show. They opened up the episode of Damage CTRL, who we did find out, indeed, are officially a unit. It's going to be Asuka and Kairi Sane as official members of the group. And I guess I should have assumed that after they talked to Kairi in the ring last week on SmackDown before the big angle that closed the show. But I wasn't 1,000% sure if she was like actually in the group or just an ally. No, she's a full-on member of Damage CTRL. And they had a moment here where Bayley did a majority of the talking, and I'll get to her in a second. But Dakota Kai said, who she's kind of doing the talking really for Kairi and Asuka and Io, which isn't the worst thing, because Kai isn't a bad talker herself, but really their English is not the best. And Asuka, and the funny thing is all three of them can speak English perfectly fine. Asuka in particular, they have her going out there and screaming, "No one's ready for Asuka," and they have her rambling and all this other sort of stuff, which got old years ago. But having Dakota Kai serve as their mouthpiece is not the worst thing. So if and when Bayley gets booted from the group, having Dakota Kai there, whether she's cleared or not, to do the talking for the group, she's not Paul Heyman, but it's better than them doing their own talking, although they could certainly speak on their own. Having her out there as the mouthpiece is not the worst idea. But anyway, there was a moment in the segment where they made a comment that one of these women in the ring is not a member of the group. And they wanted you to think, oh, Bayley's not a member of Damage CTRL. And then they said, well, it's because Asuka wasn't given a shirt yet. That's why, Kairi was officially inducted into the group earlier on in the night last week. Asuka was not. She joined the group at the end of the show, but wasn't given a shirt. And they're like, oh, all right. So they gave her a shirt. Bianca comes out. Charlotte comes out. Shotzi comes out. They brawl. The heels get the better of them, 5-on-3 advantage, really 4-on-3. Dakota Kai can't get physical right now. And that led to the segment that we got at the end of the show. More on that in a sec. But as far as Bayley's role in this whole thing, it's pretty clear they're headed towards a split where Bayley will be booted from the group. And that's the right route to take. For the longest time, and I probably talked about this last week, it kind of felt like Io was going to be the one to break away from Damage CTRL and become the breakout babyface on the show. It seems like now it's going to be Bayley instead. And honestly, that's fine. If Io, they keep her as the champion, she's had a great run so far in the past 3 months. A lot of title defenses, lots of really good matches. She's gotten the spotlight. She's gotten over. Maybe not to the same level as a Bianca or a Charlotte, but she's certainly more over now than she was a year ago or even 6 months ago. If they want to kind of move Bayley away from the group, even though it was her idea, a lot like with Edge with Judgment Day, and Judgment Day was far better off without him in it, and I liked Edge in Judgment Day, but Judgment Day post-Edge was far better and has been far better than it was when Edge was in it. And maybe Damage CTRL will have similar success because the group so far has been good. I like all three women in it, but the booking has been awful. So maybe without Bayley it will be better, I'm not sure. With Bayley, though, her promo here, I just didn't like it. I thought the segment served the purpose in setting up what we got at the end of the night, but her promo with, like, the idiot talk, and I hated that shit when she first started doing it 4 years ago. And her promos improved from there, and they're kind of hit or miss. But for the most part, her mic work is not great as a heel. Just like the screaming, like, I can't do double standards in that. I like her heel promos and not other screaming idiot like promos with other heels and other companies and in WWE just because I'm a fan of Bayley. No, her mic work most of the time is not great. as a heel. I don't know how much better it's going to be when she's a babyface and how much she's really going to change up that character. I like heel Bayley. She's done well in the role. She's far overdue for a babyface turn, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't think we get it at Survivor Series. I think they hold off until closer to WrestleMania or the Rumble. I don't think they pull the trigger that soon, but there is a story they're telling there, and I like that. So going back to what I said earlier about the women being outnumbered, the babyfaces being outnumbered, they were congregating backstage, and Nick Aldis overheard them talking about, who's going to be our fourth member of the team, because the heels had challenged them to a WarGames match, but they have no partner, so it would be 4-on-3. Nick Aldis said, we got to find out by the end of the night who your partner's going to be, otherwise it's going to be 4-on-3. Why they can't wait until next week, Becky Lynch last year waited until next week, the go-home show right before the pay-per-view. And spoiler alert, as you could probably tell from the thumbnail, it ended up being Becky Lynch as the final member of the babyface team for Women's WarGames. They waited until the final SmackDown last year. Realistically, what was stopping them from doing the same thing this year? From a storyline standpoint, that's neither here nor there. So around the show, like over the course of the show, they started attempting to recruit Michin and Zelina Vega, who I had said on WrestleRant Radio on Thursday, I would not mind if they were the final fourth member. It would be disappointing for most people because they're not a bigger name. But Michin has had issues with Damage CTRL this year, as has Zelina Vega. I know you can make the argument, obviously Becky Lynch did as well. She feuded with the group for like 4 or 5 months. Clearly she has history with them as well, but she's not a SmackDown superstar. The other people in that match are SmackDown stars. Jade Cargill is probably not ready for WarGames. That would likely be a mess, but that would have been a bigger deal and more exciting to me than Becky Lynch, who we'll get to later on, but that was the storyline they were doing in the show. I like the fact they teased Zelina and Michin and didn't go with them. I just didn't like the payoff, and we'll get to that soon enough. So the first match on the show, a triple threat tag team match with the winners earning an undisputed WWE tag team title opportunity on next week's SmackDown and FS1. They can't do it at Survivor Series unless they pull double duty, because Finn Balor and Damian Priest, the current champions, will be in the men's WarGames match. So it was actually the Profits here going over on the Brawling Brutes, Ridge Holland and Butch, and Pretty Deadly. In a really good match, I thought this turned into a really fun tag match. Profits winning I was not expecting. I thought the Brawling Brutes have lost enough to Pretty Deadly that I'm thinking they're probably going to pick up the win here. Pretty Deadly shouldn't win. Them against the Judgment Day is a weird matchup, and I like Pretty Deadly. They didn't get pinned, and I like that. But I figured the Brutes would win. They've gotten a million title shots, but I don't remember seeing the Brutes against the Judgment Day, so that would be something new, I guess. But no, it was the Profits coming over, and there was a decent chance they could become champions next week if they want to transition those titles off of Judgment Day. The interesting thing about this, couple things. One, we saw B-Fab talking to Bobby Lashley backstage during the match. And I don't think I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but we saw her interact with the group backstage on SmackDown about maybe 2 weeks ago. And I thought that was interesting. No Ashanti, the Adonis, poor guy, probably going to get fired at some point, a lot like Top Dollar. Hit Row is dead in the water. But B-Fab, they might use her in the group, and that would be interesting. The other thing about this is that after the Brawling Brutes lost, I forgot who got pinned, but there was miscommunication between the two during the match. Apparently that was enough to tease tension between the two and have Ridge Holland walk off on Butch afterward. Now, they may end up sticking together. Sheamus might be back soon, get them back on the same page. I don't know. They literally were just on NXT, a cohesive unit on Tuesday, were the Brawling Brutes, winning their match against OTM. So it kind of feels random that they'd be teasing tension out of nowhere over a miscommunication that happens all the time amongst all teams. So I thought that was weird. But at the same time, I don't want to complain. Because the Brutes, I like the Brutes. People like the Brutes. They're not the most overact on the roster, but they get good reactions. Sheamus doesn't need a faction at this point. A babyface faction specifically. And not only that, but they've lost a lot in the last year. They've gotten multiple title shots and opportunities against the Usos and all these other sort of teams. They lost to Pretty Deadly like fucking 4 or 5 times. It's time to move on from the Brawling Brute stuff for the sole reason that, again, Sheamus does not need them, but also Butch, better known as Pete Dunne, does not need them. And they really should have pushed him on his own a while ago, coming out of the men's Money in the Bank ladder match or coming out of WrestleMania, and they never did, and they just kind of kept them in the same faction. And again, people liked them and they're over, but they're wasting Butch. I mean, Pete Dunne has been not doing nothing, but he was in developmental for like 5 or 6 years. From 2017 to early 2022. That's about 5 years. And on the main roster, he's had some success alongside the Brawling Brutes. No championships, but he's done well enough. It's time to move on with him on his own. I know it's Ridge Holland being the one teasing tension. He might be the one going heel. But as long as they bring back Pete Dunne, I don't care what role he's in, he is a better heel. That, to me, is the real takeaway. He should be on his own and should have been a long time ago. We had Dragon Lee in a match up next and he also went over as well, against Axiom from NXT. This was kind of random, was not advertised in advance. But we were shown a segment with Nick Aldis and Dragon Lee backstage earlier in the day where Dragon Lee told Aldis, and I'm glad he brought this up, that he wanted to avenge Rey Mysterio, who's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. They said months. It'll probably be shorter than that with the knee surgery he just had, which apparently is legitimate. Works out well timing-wise because they can put heat on Santos in the meantime and do their own thing with Santos, which I'll get into with his segment. But Dragon Lee said, because Rey had once told Dragon Lee he's the future of Lucha Libre, and Dragon wanted to be out there to avenge Rey and go after Santos, I guess. And Nick Aldis said, for whatever reason, I'm not going to do that this week, but I do want to have you continue crushing the competition and go out there and an exhibition of sorts and have just a kick-ass match with an NXT superstar named Axiom. And this isn't all that random. They've had NXT stars on the shows before doing stuff like this, having one-off matches before going back to NXT. Dragon Lee literally did that with Dominic Mysterio a couple weeks ago. And that ended up earning him a spot on the main roster. They're pushing Dragon Lee hard in great matches. He's getting over. This was a really, really fun match. Wasn't a squash, but they both went in there and shined. The 50-50 stuff I'm not always a big fan of, but Dragon Lee is someone that you want him out there showcasing his skills. And he already had 2 kind of competitive but also kind of squashes against Cedric Alexander. Having him in there with someone competitive like Axiom, who's kind of on the same level from NXT, is perfectly fine. Axiom might also soon be main roster bound, and I would not be surprised to see that. He's been doing nothing in NXT for ages now, for the better part of the year. He's been ready for a long time. I probably wouldn't put him on SmackDown for the sole reason that they already have, Dragon Lee's on the show. They called up Cameron Grimes to do nothing. They have the entire LWO. They have a lot of mass talents. Maybe not a lot, but they have Rey and Dragon Lee. They don't need Axiom on SmackDown. They can put him on Raw, and he can have similar success that's kind of equivalent to Dragon Lee on SmackDown. This was fun stuff that they shook hands before and afterward. The big Santos Escobar explanation as far as his actions and why he did what he did and why he betrayed Rey Mysterio last week, I thought was great. I really, really did love this segment. My only nitpick was that the heat that he got, which sounded legitimate at parts, also sounded canned down the road, or not down the road, but down the stretch, where it kind of sounded like he was getting too much heat. That kind of sound piped in. But otherwise, I thought his promo was great. He came out to the old legato music, which was fucking awesome, because that music is awesome. Just an amazing song. He's back to wearing a suit. This is like the Santos of NXT. And he was out there explaining why he turned on Rey, and he wasn't out there to apologize and kind of get his way back into the group. No, he was a full-on heel here, going for the heel heat, apologizing for not going more in on Rey, attacking him more, and not, putting him on the shelf for even longer. And they said, I hope you get an infection, I hope they have to amputate, all this crazy shit. And he said before that, for part of the reason for turning on Rey was that Rey, it was Santos who wanted to start the LWO, bring it back. Rey took over as the leader, quote unquote, and then brought in Carlito as a member when he didn't need to. He, it was supposed to be him and Rey all the way, and they brought in Carlito, and he had an issue with that. He also said that Rey Mysterio stole the United States Championship from him. And I'm so glad they brought this up, because the story really does date back to August, when they had that match. Rey took his opportunity from him because Santos got hurt or whatever. And then he ended up becoming United States Champion in an opportunity that really belonged to Santos. They also had a rematch on SmackDown soon after. Santos barely lost, and you can tell by the look on his face the heel turn was coming, and we finally got it last week. So I thought this whole thing was great. Zelina Vega playing her role really well. Del Toro and Wilde as well. I thought they would join Santos here, and maybe we might still get that. I hope they do, because the original Legado is still the best Legado. And they could put Elektra Lopez back in there. She's not main roster ready in the ring, but I think Vega as a babyface has been great. So I would not have Vega turn on Rey. I would keep Rey with Zelina. You don't have to have Zelina manage Rey forever, but at least until the storyline is finished, and she can go back off and do her own thing on her own. But I like the idea of Del Toro and Wilde joining Santos, because he even said to him, there would not be you guys without me. I brought you guys to relevance, which is true. Without them, they probably would have been fired by now. And they got attacked by Santos. Vega was crying. She walked off, blah, blah, blah. Carlito makes the save. Crowd goes nuts for Carlito. He fends off Santos. And that set up their match for a Survivor Series, Carlito versus Santos Escobar, which sounds awesome. So it seems a little early for that. I would have waited until down the road, but if they're going to do it on pay-per-view in Chicago, I can't complain about that. So that's pretty cool. No pun intended. Good angle there. Grayson Waller having a quick match against Cameron Grimes, which was basically a squash. And I feel bad because Cameron Grimes is fun. I like Cameron. I think he has a bright future. He could have a bright future if they utilized him properly. But he's done a whole lot of nothing so far on SmackDown. It was all about Waller here, bouncing back from the loss to LA Knight from last week. Pretty short and sweet stuff here. I just feel bad that Grimes really isn't doing anything. It's better than him not being on the show at all, but still, he should be doing more than he is. And the match was fine for what it was. Kevin Owens is still suspended in storyline, which is why he did not appear here. Austin Theory was on commentary. We had Road Dogg on commentary, too, randomly enough, filling in for Corey Graves, who was out on paternity leave right now. So, or no, maternity leave, I believe. Isn't that maternity leave? No, paternity leave is for the men. Maternity leave is for the women, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, that's why Road Dogg was on commentary. Austin Theory was on commentary here. So no Kevin Owens on the show this week, but we did find out he will be back next week on the Grayson Waller effect. So Owens back on the blue brand in 1 week. We had Paul Heyman to the ring alongside Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso addressing Solo Sikoa's defeat of John Cena at Crown Jewel. They're really going all in on the fact that Solo decimated Cena and ended his career. Cena will be back at some point. I like this because it puts more heat on Solo and really emphasizes that beating John Cena means something, as opposed to when Theory beat him and it went absolutely nowhere. And Theory did bring it up on occasion, but they didn't really capitalize off of it the way that they should have. This was a decisive win for Solo. When Theory beat Cena at Mania, that was not decisive and the match wasn't that good. I like Cena and Solo more from Crown Jewel, and it was better executed. Hopefully this benefits Solo. They don't give up on him entirely, and they can continue to ride this wave of whatever this is. I don't know if Cena comes back for revenge. You would think, based on how they talked about it here, that's where they're going with this. But Cena probably won't be back for a while. If they want to run it back in Mania, that would make sense. But I would also be content if they did not run it back and just left it at Solo beating Cena and having that be it. But anyway, LA Knight ended up interrupting him, saying that he's not done with the bloodline and he wants to take down the entire group. You would think from hearing this segment that we were getting Roman Reigns and LA Knight again at some point. I don't think we are. I think at the Rumble, it's going to be Roman Reigns and AJ Styles, who is still not back on SmackDown, oddly enough. I think LA Knight's done with Roman Reigns, so I'm just kind of curious what this is supposed to accomplish. His match with Jimmy Uso was well wrestled. The crowd was behind LA Knight. That's really all that matters. Kind of an average outing. It was good for what it was. LA Knight wins. So he gets laid out by the bloodline, Solo and Jimmy. And then Cody Rhodes makes the save, because apparently Cody was already backstage meeting with Nick Aldis. You could see him in the background of that Nick Aldis, women's backstage segment from earlier on in the show. He was already at SmackDown, so it's not like he just flew in just to fucking save LA Knight. I don't really know where they're going with this. This was kind of confusing to me, because I feel like we're still a ways off from Cody and Roman rekindling their rivalry going into WrestleMania. Is this leading to Cody and LA Knight on SmackDown next week? I'm not, as a tag team against these two, I'm not really sure. Maybe LA Knight's going to be in WarGames, which would also seem kind of random, because he has no issues with the Bloodline, or rather the Judgment Day at all. Just super strange stuff. I know Jimmy and Solo cost, or rather just Jimmy specifically, cost Cody the tag team titles with Jey Uso a month ago, but that was a month ago. Why attempt to exact revenge now? Very strange. So I don't really know what the purpose of that was. And I also don't really think LA Knight has much to gain from continuing to feud with the Bloodline. They're top stars on the show, sure, but he's now beaten Jimmy 3 times. He's already pinned Solo once. I mean, what does he really have to accomplish against these guys is my question. But it is what it is. I guess we'll find out. And at least LA Knight's on the show, doing stuff, cutting promos. It's better than nothing, so I can't complain too much. But I'm not really sure what the end game here is supposed to be. We get to the main event segment, no match. The main event segment of the show is Becky Lynch being revealed as the final member of the women's WarGames team alongside Charlotte, Bianca, and Shotzi. Charlotte had to make a call, and as soon as she mentioned her best friend love and hate relationship, I'm thinking, okay, it's Becky Lynch. Even though, again, the last time we saw these two women in the ring together at Survivor Series 2 years ago, they fucking hated each other. I still don't think they're too fond of each other, and this is just a storyline thing, although I could be wrong. But they brawled with Damage CTRL to close out the show. The women's WarGames match was complete. Now, again, I've already said this before. I won't waste too much time on it. I do not like Becky Lynch in WarGames. She's a bigger name than Michin or Zelina Vega. I get it. They're not that over. At least Michin is not. Vega's a bit more over. At that point, then, just don't do WarGames. I know they got screwed with the Dakota Kai injury from earlier this year. If she's not hurt, honestly, it probably would be Charlotte, Bianca, Shotzi, and Asuka. Asuka really does not need to be in Damage Control. It would probably be them four against all of Damage Control and Kairi Sane. But they got fucked when she got hurt, and that was, again, not recent. This has been, she's been hurt for a while now. So they turned Asuka heel, or was already a heel, whatever she was supposed to be. They put her in Damage Control, and now they have to bring in Becky Lynch because they have no one else from SmackDown to fill that spot. I don't know. It probably wouldn't have made as much sense because, again, maybe it'll be revealed that SmackDown gets Becky Lynch for Survivor Series because she's already feuding with Xia Li. So that's why I don't really like her being on SmackDown and pulling double duty. She was just on NXT as well. It's just not really that necessary. It feels like overexposure to me, especially for a one-night thing. And she already put her feud to rest with Damage Control at WrestleMania earlier this year. She fucking won WarGames a year ago when she was the final member of that team alongside Bianca a year ago. It's just the same shit all over again. It feels like wash, rinse, and repeat. It does not feel fresh at all. And again, at that point, I just say, then don't do WarGames. Just because you have a men's WarGames match does not mean that you need to have a women's WarGames match. Just because you have a women's WarGames match, that makes sense. Doesn't mean you need to have a men's WarGames match. That doesn't make sense. This year, the men's WarGames match makes sense. The women's ones kind of does, but I just don't like Becky Lynch being in there. Jade Cargill would have been fine. The issue is that in ring-wise, I don't think she's ready for that. She should also probably be a heel. I don't know where she's been off to. She disappeared from TV like a month ago. We haven't seen her since. She was all over Raw and SmackDown and NXT. I don't know what happened with that. She appeared at the pay-per-view even at Fastlane. So I don't know where she's been off to, but that would have been cooler. I feel like that would have been more of an attraction to see Jade and Bianca on the same team. She teased something with Charlotte a while ago. I don't know. She doesn't have to be on SmackDown permanently, but I thought that would have been a cooler get for the team than Becky Lynch again. It just feels like the same thing as last year. Sasha would have been amazing, but Sasha's probably not coming back anytime soon. She might even still be hurt. She probably is hurt. I was thinking maybe there's a chance she's not as hurt as she let on, so it's more of a surprise where she pops up next. She's not going to be at Survivor Series, but Becky Lynch isn't the worst option. I just feel like it feels too similar to last year to really feel special or interesting. But it should be a good match nonetheless. Overall, I thought SmackDown was great. I really enjoyed the show, much like I did last week. It feels like they found a rhythm with the women's division closing out the show 2 weeks in a row, which is great. The tag team division had their thing going on this week. Dragon Lee is shining right now. The LWO angle is great. Waller and Theory are feuding with Kevin Owens. They got the LA Knight Bloodline stuff going on right now. They got a lot of different storylines. Not every single one's a home run, but they're trying. It's a 2-hour show compared to Raw. It feels like a more complete show and succinct and focused show. I like it. I'm digging SmackDown right now, heading into Survivor Series. That looks like a really good show on paper, and I'm looking forward to that. So we have the go-home show next week that I'll probably attempt to review before the pay-per-view that night. It's going to be another one of those like last-minute reviews, so keep an eye out for that. And that should be coming up at some point. So again, SmackDown review coming next week, likely before Survivor Series that Saturday. But as far as this show goes, 2 thumbs up. Really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for checking out my review of SmackDown for November 17th, 2023. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.